Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. It is Monday, February the 3rd. We ended in January on Friday, right? I think Friday was Friday. February, no, February 1st was on Saturday, right?
Yes,
So we
that's
ended.
correct.
I just want to make sure. Geez, oh Pete, so I'm making sure I got my math right there, or at least my dates right. But anyways, welcome to Inside the Game, the podcast here on the National Soccer Network. Jonathan Turner, alongside Mr. Nathan Wangler. And we are excited to have you back here again this morning. Good morning, Peter. And I'm sure we'll start to see others kind of hopping in here and there. But it is a Monday. And, we kind of started getting into our themes here last week, like Throwback Thursday, Film Room Friday, which I like. Nate, you need a key light on your face. Let's see here. Nate, you need a key light on your face.
No, I know I do. I need to buy a light to put on me. I got one overhead light in here, and it's not clearly not good enough. I just got done setting up all my other stuff. You can see all the stuff behind me, and then all the panels on the wall. But the one element I forgot to get was a podcast light. So I'm going to get that today. I'm gonna put that on the list actually while we're speaking because I'm the kind of ADD that I need to write out a list of things to do on a daily basis. Otherwise, it's probably not gonna get done. So yeah, I'm actively gonna put that on the list. But thank you for the reminder, Peter.
So I actually have these three lights that attach to my desk that they attach and they go up and then
That's nice.
they kind of spread out. So I have three lights at my desk right now, but we don't need to talk about lights. And I appreciate Peter coming in with the knowledge this morning about how dark it is right now on Nathan's face, and that might be on purpose. To be fair, there's that Seinfeld episode where there was a woman that Jerry was dating. Remember, she met her at a party.
Mm-hmm.
It was Bryan Cranston. I don't remember the name of the character, but Bryan Cranston was the actor. And at his party, he met a girl, and every time the light changed, she either looked really pretty or she looked awful. It was like, whatever it was. Like he's like, I remember the scene very vividly. He's like, I met this girl at your party, and she comes up and introduces herself, and he's like, oh yeah, Mazel tov. Like it's like, but anyways, I think that's what a great show that was. But good morning there, Jimmy Co, and welcome back here to Inside the Game on this fine Monday morning. If you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button, like us, share this with your friends and family, as we always say, or your enemies, as I've said that too in the past. But Nathan, first off, man, how was your weekend?
Weekend was good. I talked about my opportunity to go see the Brez. That was on Thursday. But honestly, outside of that, just busy. We're getting towards obviously the end of the winter season, and that stuff's starting to wrap up. So went from I did hockey on Friday night, and then obviously I had a basketball doubleheader on Saturday, which was pretty cool. And it was senior day for one of the two programs. So the men's team, it's not their last home game, but I think the women's side, I think they specifically schedule it on a certain day just so that everybody kind of knows, even the parents that are from out of state. Because we had people come up from, Texas and Florida and all these other spots. And a lot of them like grandparents, a lot of the parents are still kind of Midwestern based because majority of your recruiting at the NAI level is going to come relatively close to home simply because you can't offer a lot in terms of scholarship opportunities, but it was a really good turnout. And Cornerstone, honestly, their facility is probably D2 level. Like it's better than some D1 schools. And so it's always interesting because teams hate going to play there. And not for the reason that you think. Sometimes teams hate going to play at your place because it's loud and it's rowdy. You know what I mean? Like if you're a road team and you're going to play at like the Breslin Center, as I just mentioned, that place gets loud and rowdy. But Cornerstone's kind of the opposite because normally like there's not a ton of people there. So it's so empty that it's almost like playing inside of a YMCA. And it's so big that sometimes when you're out on the floor and you're looking at like the basket, the backdrop behind it is so far away that sometimes you can't even get a feel as to what the distance is. So dudes hate it because you can't get any mojo going in that building. But on that particular day, it was actually pretty filled out and people kept coming up to us and they were, blowing us up with compliments and whatnot. I just think it's because, me and my partner, we do the best to try and put out the best product we can. At that level, it's not a guarantee some places. So that was really entertaining, but just busy, man. That's a day in the life. I feel like a lot of our work comes on the weekends, which is kind of the opposite of what you're dealing with for a lot of other jobs. So but it was fun.
Nice, man. Very good.
What about yourself?
My weekend was much of the same. Very busy. Obviously starting with Friday night, and MASL action, on the platform, and then on Saturday we had a doubleheader at Oakland. So men's and women's basketball played at 1 and 4. So we had those productions. And to put things in perspective for us at the Premier Media Group, when we start talking about producing, these games, they're 5 camera setups. And it comes with a pregame package for women, a pregame package for men, and a postgame package for men. So there are not just the 2 broadcasts. There's an additional 3 that we're responsible for, even though they're pre-recorded. Well, the pregame shows are pre-recorded. They still require the same level of production as another thing that we would do. So we had those. So that all took place on Saturday. And then immediately following the men's game, after the post-game press conference, I headed back to our studio where we had 3 more MASL games that took place on Saturday night. So I walked in the door sometime around midnight on Saturday after being out of the house since 9 a.m. So a very busy day. And then yesterday, much of the same. We had 4 more games yesterday on the platform. So that was fun. So a very busy weekend, to say the least. And but that's what we signed up for. I mean, as much as I sometimes would much rather be at home playing Fortnite with the buddies, this is much more fulfilling. And funny, after our show on Friday, I had a great conversation with a young lady from California. She grew up in California, played high school soccer, collegiate soccer, and went over and played soccer in Spain for a bit. And she went to Spain to play professionally, so she kind of skipped kind of college to an extent, like at least a chunk of college. And she went off, and she was making like no money in Spain, right? They were paying her next to nothing when she was playing. And now she's back here in the States, and she's kind of like trying to figure out what she wants to do, right? But she wants to stay in soccer. She knows she wants to stay in soccer. And there are a lot of athletes, regardless of sport, Nathan, that want to be a part of the sport that they love, even though they're not playing anymore. Obviously, some will go into coaching, personal training, something along those lines. Some will go into maybe the refereeing side of it, right? Some will go into the commentating side of it, talent side. And then obviously some might do some things as far as maybe writing or blogging or something along those lines, where to kind of still stay active. Some may end up owning a team or being part of an ownership group of a team. And it got me thinking, right? And I'm curious to those who are at home or watching, wherever you're watching, and I'd love to get involved in the chat. Again, you can hop on YouTube and get your comments or on Facebook. I think we were able to do it on Facebook as well. Do you think you're a sellout if you don't go for the thing that you love to do? You know what I mean? And or settling, right? I mean, how many of us are in jobs or in roles that, to be frank, don't get you excited to get up in the morning, right? But they pay the bills, right? Let's be honest. I mean, what the American dream is not so much about like living your dreams as it is about making the money to support a dream, right? So that I think is how you kind of put it, right? How many of us are out there doing our dream right now? I'm sure if you ask professional athletes, they probably would say, I am, right? You start asking people at the highest levels of whatever they're doing, they might say, yes, this is what I dreamt to be. But it brings me back to that Adam Sandler movie, where Deeds.
Mm-hmm.
As bad as that movie is, and as bad as most of Adam Sandler's movies are in the overall like cinematic aspect, I mean, they're funny. I mean, most of the movies are funny, but they're
true.
They're just like, it's like
I'll give you that.
they're just dumb, right? It's like, come on, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you got this guy who lives in where in the middle of nowhere and whatever, and now he becomes this rich and famous. I mean, it's just such a stupid movie plot. But anyways, in that movie, he's at the shareholders meeting at the end of the movie, right, where he's trying to tell all these billionaires to not vote to like sell a company. And he was saying, well, the younger version of ourselves would be we'd be punching or beating ourselves up because of this idea that we're trying to sell. And then, what did you want to be when you grow up? Oh, I wanted to be a dentist. Oh, I wanted to be this. I wanted to be a nail tech or whatever, a veterinarian, right? All these billionaires are talking about what they wanted to be, but aren't, even though they have gazillions of dollars. It wasn't what they dreamt to be. So being rich and famous doesn't necessarily translate to the dream that you had as a child of what you wanted to be or living your dreams, right? And that's the thing I wanted to say this one before we hop into our main topic is how many people out there are I maybe sellout's the wrong word, right? But settling is probably the right word. I have settled into the fact that I'm doing this because it pays the bills, because when I go and do this, everyone tells me that there's no chance you're going to make it, so I don't pursue it, right? I stopped, or this, that, or the other. I think that is something that's a real thing in this country. I think a lot of parents out there kind of put this emphasis on their children about going to college, right? And not just going to college, but also completing college and then getting a career, right? And that's why, like today, in today's world, if you look at, what is the purpose of going to college? What is it, right? Is it to go after your dreams or to go after a job? And I'm curious what people's thoughts are on that, because this young lady was almost crying about how passionate she is about soccer and how she wants to live in that world still, but she's like torn, like she blew out her ankle and her knee and she can't do it anymore, right? Like, you can't play at that high level anymore. So I'm curious people's thoughts on this.
What I will say is that I think all successful people at some point have to go through a little bit of a rebranding phase. And we see that even with some of the top superstars in our game. And it's the reason why, you get to a certain point and you're like, okay, well, maybe I've hit my ceiling here, but that doesn't mean I can't branch off and do this other thing. I think of The Rock. I think Dwayne Johnson whenever I think of this kind of story, because his original dream, always growing up, was to play in the NFL. That's it. And he was good enough to get a scholarship to go to Miami, which, if you knew anything about Miami during those days, I always say back in the day, Miami was like the Alabama of college football at one point. I mean, it was all about the U. You were either going to the U or you were going to like Notre Dame. Like, those were the two schools. And so he ends up going there, doesn't play at all. You got a bunch of Hall of Famers and pros in front of him. And so his whole dream of making the NFL is all of a sudden dashed. It's gone. And so what does he do? Well, he goes over and he starts doing WWE, and he starts branching off and doing other things. And he's still in the sports game in one way or another, but he found out a way to rebrand himself, which I think all successful people have to do. But talking about regular people for a second.
For sure.
I just think there's this concept, and I think we forget sometimes that, like, the time we're living on is always borrowed. And I always struggle with the concept of, like, what if you like die with like a bunch of money in your bank account? It was almost like you spent all that time just trying to build up a level of comfort, only to not really kind of enjoy it. And the truth is time enjoyed isn't time wasted. And I have multiple different examples of people who have been in really good professional positions that one day just realized they didn't like it, and that there was no reason in doing it if they didn't enjoy it. And I'll give you a couple of them here. So the first one was the original color analyst in West Michigan for the Whitecaps before I ended up taking over in that role. He was a chiropractor before he got into broadcasting. That's a great job. You make some pretty good money in that business. I mean, you're considered a part of the medical field. He had a bunch of regulars that always came to see him. He had his degree. He was making money. And then I think it was his dad, I believe. Just wasn't doing well. I think he was sick. You know, I think it was kind of getting towards the end of the line, if you will. And there was a heart-to-heart conversation that they had, and he just kind of asked him straight up. And I don't know why he knew to ask this question when he did. The timing was perfect on it, but he asks, Mike is his name. He goes, you know, Mike, do you love what you do? And of course he starts off with, well, yeah, I mean, it's a good job and I like the people I work with and I make good money and it's a professional career and everything seems to be all in one place. And he goes, yeah, but do you love it? And he's like, no. He goes, well, what do you love? He goes, I love sports. I love providing sports commentary. And he was doing it at the high school level, but he obviously was not doing it at a higher level. He goes, okay, do that. And so he ends up, you know, leaving that job, and then he starts working as a part-time bartender, and he's traveling, and he's doing these play-by-play games, and he's putting it together. And his wife is a teacher, and so she's, you know, obviously not working on the biggest budget in the world. So these two are doing a lot of just making ends meet, just so that he can do his job. And this was a guy who had a professional career before, but realized ultimately, and I don't know why, I guess it took him seeing his dad kind of get to the end of the line to realize, like, if you don't like it, why are you doing it? There's no point. The other example I'll give to you, and it's someone that I've mentioned on this podcast before, John Michael. He's the TV voice of the Cleveland Cavaliers. He was a lawyer. He went to Notre Dame Law School, got his degree, became a very successful lawyer. I don't know if he was doing it for about a decade or so. I don't know what it was, but also the same exact thing. Got bored. It's like, yeah, I mean, a lawyer? Are you kidding me? That's a 6-figure salary. Like, that's a lot of good money, and that's a really, really good job. And he kind of looked at his life after a while and went, I don't know. I don't know if it just gets me up in the morning. I don't know if this is just kind of becoming a job I have to do. And so he decides to start doing high school sports. He leaves being a lawyer. I mean, I'm sure he could be a lawyer if he wanted to. It's not like, you know, you just can't be a lawyer, but he still has a certification. But he leaves that and he starts doing high school sports, much like you and I are. Just starts broadcasting high school sports. That leads to one thing, which leads to another, which he's, I mean, a different level of dedicated. He has an entire binder full of all the games he's done, and he's listened to every single one of them and taken notes, which,
oh, wow.
I guess if you want to get to that level, you kind of have to be that level of dedicated.
Well, if you're a lawyer too, I feel like that is, you know,
yeah, it's a little detail oriented.
Yeah,
but
a little bit. Yeah.
That led to this, which led to eventually a spot in the AHL opened up. He took that, and then obviously the NBA gig came along, and now he's doing it at the highest level. And obviously he's very talented in what he does. And clearly there has to be some level of that, but there's two responses to what you're saying. Number one, rebranding is always a very important thing, right? If I ever get to a point in my career to where, you know, maybe I've hit my ceiling with the play-by-play, I hope that's not the case. I haven't yet. So I don't know if that's ever going to happen. But I don't think I would ever get out of sports. I think I would go into production. I think I would go into camera work. I think I would go into hosting or doing some of these other things. There's opportunities to rebrand yourself outside of what your initial dream was. And I think the most successful people in the world are very good at doing that. The other thing that I would say, the other response to what your question is that, you know, it really is the simple concept. This is something that I think people want to think they live, but a lot of people don't. And that's the whole concept of, if it doesn't get you out of bed in the morning, if it doesn't make you happy, there really is no point in doing it. I know there's financial security and there's other things, but sometimes I think when people look at what we do, they also don't picture the stuff that you have to do to put yourself in that position, which is the sucky stuff, which is the hard stuff, which is the sacrifice, which is the time, which is all those other things. So even if you enjoy doing it, it doesn't mean it's not going to be hard and there's not going to be work. But here's the thing, right? Would you rather suffer for something that you love or suffer for something that you could give or take on any given day? So it's tough. It's really, really hard. But if you don't like it, why the heck are you doing it? That's what it comes down to for me.
No, I agree. I first off, the pressures of the world, right?
Mm,
those pressures are real.
big time.
They are really real.
Yep.
And then there's the pressures of your relationship, right? If you're not in a relationship, spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, doesn't matter. There is a pressure from that aspect, right? So
I got to
there's
find
a
the right people.
yeah, I mean, you got to find someone who's willing to say, you need to go follow your dreams, and to be fair, there's probably a lot of people out there that are okay with that. But then when the reality of following your dreams doesn't necessarily equate to the money that you maybe want to make, that can become a real problem. But I want to ask that question, or I think, and this applies to anything, doesn't it? Just apply to a job or career. It applies to sports, right? I mean, how many people out there are having to face a choice when they get to that high school level, right? Where, hey, I want to play club soccer still. In order to do that, can't play high school, so I have to make a choice. And that isn't complacency. That's just they have to make tough choices. But either way, I want to dive into our topic here today, and our topic today is not the UPSL, but the UPSL finals were this weekend in Irvine, California, at Championship Stadium. And I've had a chance to call this. I haven't talked about it on Friday. I've had a chance to call 3 of these, right? And the last one I called was last year at this time at that weekend in Irvine, California. I talked about how I got sick, and it was it was not the best experience for me.
Yeah.
But I want you to see that. I'm going to share my screen. I think this is something that's really kind of an interesting. I want you just to take a look at this. This is from yesterday's game, the national championship game. Okay, so I'm going to put it up on the screen. So this was halftime yesterday. Okay, so it's roughly, I think it's at this point, it's like 6:00 in California. Okay, so it's dark outside, maybe 6:30, whatever it is. So this is what it looks like at halftime. Okay, so this is what it looked like. We'll say like right around beginning of the game, right? So 20 minutes in. Okay. So we saw halftime. We're now going to start. Okay, this is 60 minutes in. Okay. This is 76 minutes in. All right. And now I mean, the fog has come in. And I mean, it is just. I mean, to be fair, I mean, it is terrible. The play
Is that fog or is that smog from the fires?
I don't know, man. But I mean, like, look at how you can't see anybody. Like
Oh,
this
nothing.
was.
Oh my gosh.
I was like,
and how do you call that game? So I'd be interested to listen to the commentary on some of this. And it well, how do you ref a game like that too? Like I'm thinking about, I guess it'd be easier if you're down on the field, you can actually kind of see stuff, but goodness gracious.
this is a nice comment. It was not the same without you, Jonathan, behind the mic. I noticed. See that? Here's the thing I would say about this, right? And Peter's kissing my ass. I love
What
it,
a
man.
guy.
What a guy. I, by the way, 100% agree with you. By the way, I can't. I mean, I am supportive. Just send that to the UPSL. But
He wants a sweatshirt now. He got his T-shirt. He wants a sweatshirt now.
So I have to send him an invite today to order that shirt. But so remind me of that later. But so I did have a chance to watch and to watch all 4 games. And production of these things are pretty good. Do I think on any level that we are the best production company on the planet? No, I don't. I don't. And if I came off that way, if I tried to, one, it would be disingenuous to the world that we are in. And then number 2 is that there is someone that is always better than you. I learned that a long time ago, right? That even though I consider myself the best goalkeeper at the time, there was always someone that was better than me. And the sooner I realized that, the better it was for me to, when I went out into the world, if I'm trying to be competitive, saying things like we're better than them. That's not how that works, right? That's not how you win opportunities. You go out there and say, here's what we can do that makes us a better option for you. Not better than them, but a better option for you, right? Here's what makes us better. The one thing I'll say is this, is that commentary is not a one-size-fits-all thing. We've talked about that. Me and you are very different in how we handle a game, and there's nothing wrong with that. Do I think that I'm darn good at soccer? Yes, I do, especially now today than I did 3 years ago. And I would argue that if you were to put me up against a bunch of people out there in the world, that I would stand up against them on any day of the week, including Saturdays and Sundays. So I don't have any doubt about what I can bring to the table as far as a commentator. With that being said, this is the national championships. All right, this is it. This is the national championships, okay? To put things in perspective, Soda City FC, it is the first time in the UPSL history that a team has won both the spring and fall. First time. It is an extremely hard thing to do, right? Yeah. So, first time in history. All right. So, I do want to play this, and I want you to. I know we do Film Room Fridays, kind of like on, on Fridays, but I felt this was a good thing for us to show. And this is not a knock on the commentators. This is not a knock on them. I just want you to tell me and you at home if you believe that these commentators understanding the moment. Yes, it's a 4-1 game at this point. All right, the game is it ends up being 4-2. But do they hit this game where it's supposed to? Let's take a listen here. I'm going to plug this thing in here. Share. Hang on. Present. Share screen. Sorry. Got to click it back in. Hit share. There we go. And here we go.
It's over. And the celebrations begin. It's one of the strangest endings weather-wise to a match, but here we are, folks. Soda City FC, the reigning champions, remain champions against FC Folsom with a score of 4-2 here in sunny Southern California.
Who would have thought? Who would have thought after looking at these pictures that we're in Orange County, California? But what a fantastic match of football.
You can see that the Folsom team has worked their socks off. They've left everything on the pitch. Some of the players are down. They need to be consoled.
But they need to hold their head
up
high.
That is how that game came to an end.
Yeah.
Now again, if I go to and the cool thing about the UPSL is obviously they have a channel. So we're gonna go as bad as I felt last year. Let's go to the championship match from last year's matchup, featured matches. Let's go find that one because I feel like kind of showing what it could be. Sorry.
Yeah.
What it could be. I feel like that would be like, and so this was all the way back to last year. Go ahead, keep going. I know you probably have something.
No, I'm just saying. No, quickly before you get this in, and I'll share my opinions on what we just watched. After we wrap up with your example of the ending. But before we do all that, you're right. I want to put it out there. It's not on the announcer. It's not on him. Because I think he came in with a certain level of experience. And so you can only expect so much out of someone who clearly is young. And I can hear that through his voice that he is a younger individual.
No, he is. Nope. Not young at all.
How old is he?
I don't know. He is a seasoned commentator out of England.
Really?
Yep.
Yep. So I would have to wonder exactly how long, but it might also come back to the style of broadcasting too. I mean, that's the other thing you and I have talked a lot about, the American style versus the European style, especially when it comes to calling the game of soccer. Very much different. So that might play into it too. And here's the thing is, like, I like the words that he used. Like, I don't think his word usage was necessarily that bad. I just don't think he delivered that extra juice to it. But I would be curious to know how old he is, because you say seasoned professional, but based off of the voice that I'm hearing, it doesn't sound like someone who's been doing this for quite some time. But anyways.
Let's take a look at this. This is my bad game that I had here. So last year from DeRosa.
Is over. And Chiriaco FC will make their way into a championship, and it's unbelievable what they've been able to do here in just a short period of time. 2 years in the making in the UPSL, and they're national champions for 2023.
Congratulations.
And again, I mean, clearly it's different mindsets, but this is again from last year. So I'm not gonna. But it just I look at the moment for what it is, and a national championship. I feel like they didn't hit it in the head. And I've listened to all the games, and I think that they managed the games pretty well. But these are the moments we talk about, right? Did I nail mine? I don't believe that I nailed mine, but I at least think that mine had way more energy to it. At least was trying to make some energy. It just seems so flat to me.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, and it's wordy. And here's my issue. And I remember doing a basketball game recently, and it's along the same lines, but I was talking to my color analyst, and we were on the verge of a big time upset, a massive upset. And so it's like, I think it was like 25 seconds to go in the game or something. And we go into commercial break, and he just wants to keep talking. And I'm like, no, I'm like, send it to break. He's like, why? I'm like, send it to break. I'm like, just trust me. So he sends it to break, and he's the one that's actually doing play-by-play in this game. I gave him a certain amount of games that he could do play-by-play in. And so we're talking, and he's like, why'd you have me send it to break? I go, I need you to stop for a second. I need you to think about how you're going to package this call when that final buzzer goes off. How are you going to phrase it? The energy you're going to use, what words are going to use, what are you going to emphasize? If you need to write it down, okay? But I need you to game plan how it is you are going to package this up and put an exclamation point on this. Because here's my thing, JT, and I struggle when broadcasters don't understand this. I feel like the most important parts of our call are the beginning and the end, right? How do you bring people in? How do you get them hook, line, and sinker to continue listening to the rest of your broadcast? The big moments during the game obviously are huge too. But at the end, how do you make that finishing call, right? How do you cap it off? And maybe this is something we could talk about on Film Room Friday. Because as an announcer, you need to be able, and that's I could tell that this kid had nothing at least a little bit scripted out. He hadn't planned at all how the call was going to sound on either side. And so when you get to that point and you're not prepared for it, you're just kind of like feeling it out. You're kind of like, okay, what do I potentially say here? But you're right. I would definitely say the energy was not there. And my trouble is like, did the people who hired him to do it, did they know that this is someone who couldn't necessarily meet the moment? Because if you say someone that's professional and seasoned, I imagine that he's had calls that are better than that, and that's probably not his best work. But I can tell that at least he wasn't prepared for that moment.
Well, and again, I mean, I don't have anything to do with the average aspect of it, but. And again, this is the 2023 spring final. So this one that was in Leesburg, Virginia. I actually think I invited you to this. I believe.
Maybe.
I think I actually said, and you were not available, unfortunately. But here's this one. This is the final. This is the national championship. Frenzy FC in this final.
And the referee blows his final whistle. AS Frenzy traveled 855 miles, and they are the 2023 UPSL national champions.
412 teams began the season, 32 reached the postseason, 4 reached the championship weekend, and AS Frenzy, one of the youngest teams by average age group in the entire country, has just captured their very first national championship in the UPSL.
So that was actually Dan Stickerat and I in Leesburg, Virginia. But
sound good.
So, and again, obviously, I was not sick there, but I just these are the things that drive me nuts. Is that, to be fair, anybody could really do what we do. I don't mean that to be distant to like. We're talking about just talking. That's what we're talking about, right? So
I would disagree with you.
But I mean, though, is that someone could grab a microphone, someone could grab a mic, right? And they could sit at a game and call it. And whether we all like it or not, that's the part that is the part that's going to be the challenge, right? But anybody could get in front of this microphone and just start chatting, right? So, and if anyone has proven that, it's me, because even though I might have a natural ability to do it, I didn't go to school, journalism school, bro. I just picked up a mic, just like you're talking about John Michaels, right? An attorney, he wanted to do it, he fell in love with it, went to high school games, just started doing it, right? So, but my perspective on this is that the difference between someone that just anyone can picking up a microphone and calling a game to getting to a point where you're in a national final and understanding the moment for what it is. If we look at that raw moment we looked at last on Friday with the Vermont guy, right? Younger commentator for sure. We talked about how raw that moment was, and you said you liked that moment. There is no doubt in our minds that the enthusiasm in that moment, over the top perfect. I mean, if you want enthusiasm, there is nothing more than that raw, authentic enthusiasm. I did not see that this weekend in those games, even from a standpoint of goals. And you want to know why? Because this is my thought process, is that there are certain commentators that kind of, I think because of maybe the leagues they typically cover or the level they cover, that there isn't this level of excitement when a goal is being scored. And maybe that trickles down a little bit to them. Maybe they're so used to calling, oh, it's a goal, and there's not a lot of whatever. Maybe that's it. I don't know. But I don't get it. I don't understand why there's not a level of excitement there. Even though that's fog, the first thing they acknowledge is the fog. That's the first thing you acknowledged. I mean, these teams traveled all over the country. The first thing you acknowledge is the fact that it was shitty weather, and and that's what's going to get you the moment of excitement is how foggy it is outside, in an unorthodox game with fog. But Soda did win. Congratulations to Soda.
Yeah,
that's I just my soapbox. I know.
And I know I agree. And listen, energy is one thing, but you can always get the point across without having to freak out or go way over the top in certain situations. And it was a 4-1 game at the end. And again, different styles. And this is just me listening objectively. Sometimes I think the European style is it's a lot different than the way we do it over here. They're not as much the yelling and screaming guys. They're not going to really punch it at the end. And so sometimes I think that's a regional thing. Maybe he is the way that he is. Again, my issue that I keep coming back to is he had no idea of what it was that he was going to say. Anytime I go into a game where I know there is going to be a champion or there might be something historical that's going to happen, I'm going to go into it with an understanding of, okay, this is kind of what I want to talk about here. Like, I liked your line at the end of that second clip you just shot about how far they came. That kind of puts it into perspective, right? Like, they trekked this entire distance and they finally reached the mountaintop, for the first time. Like that is an awesome way of packaging that up. And even if you weren't as loud or as like, whoa, as you were in that moment, that's still a good call because of what you said. And just by mentioning how far that is, okay, you've painted that image in people's heads. And so to circle back to what you were saying, I agree with the fact that anybody can do this in the way that you can just give anybody a microphone and just have them talk in a booth. But how you paint pictures and how you relate to an audience and how you cultivate that image in big moments is what is going to separate you as someone who actually can do this job pretty well and someone who it just does it from time to time. And so, yeah, you're right. There wasn't a whole lot of energy at all in that call. And it is problematic. I also just think, sometimes for some broadcasters are just not comfortable going to that next level. And I don't know if it's because they don't know their voice or they don't, they're not comfortable going to that stretch, but it's really hard when you talk about a championship matchup and something like that. You need a little bit more out of it. And so, but I think there's also just certain commentators that just don't necessarily do that. They don't go to that level. And there's even professionals like that. I mean, you think of like, someone like Bob Costas. I can't remember the last time I've ever heard Bob Costas like jump out of his shoes before. But he's a pro. He's a pro. He's a Hall of Famer.
Enthusiasm can come out in different ways. I mean, energy, enthusiasm can come out. And again, I don't disagree with you on that. This is another commentator from the UPSL National Championships in Pittsburgh. This was at Highmark Stadium in Pittsburgh. This gentleman is part of the ASMG group out of Atlanta. So just take a listen to this one, and we'll keep continuing this conversation.
Down the middle. You're looking for a flick on. You're looking for a knockdown. Into the box, and Cotton claims. And that, ladies and gentlemen, does it. Soda City FC. It's perfection in Pittsburgh for the Palmetto Boys. 3-2 the final. They were the team of destiny, and they've done it.
Stop talking.
Matters most. Soda City 2024 spring season champions in the UPSL.
So So obviously, but
good.
No doubt, there's enthusiasm or energy.
Yeah,
there's no doubt. And again, we could mean it. We don't have to scream. We could be like, "Oh, yeah, what a great finish, everybody." I mean, there's ways to be enthusiastic. By the way, I do believe, though, in these moments specifically, you start talking about, game 13 on your schedule, women's basketball, Division I, whatever. Okay, they win by 20 points. There's no need for enthusiasm. Okay, but you get to the mountaintop, so to speak, right? This is a national championship game. That means that all these teams fought to get here. They all battled it out for however many weeks. And that game, above all games below it, deserves in that moment the very best that you possibly have. And again, Bob Costas, whatever, he got to that mountaintop, and at that level, maybe it's different. But for here, these amateur, I just believe that these games deserve a level of authenticity and enthusiasm that you're not getting in a consistent basis, and I say consistently because I've had a chance, the games that I have not called, or the games that like this gentleman has not called, you can tell that there's a lack of enthusiasm. So
you have to be able to meet the moment.
Yeah, that's it.
You have to be able to meet the moment. And I remember hearing about another guy that I work with in minor league ball, getting critiques from someone, that's doing it, Joe Davis, who's doing it for the Los Angeles Dodgers. And his main critique is you won't make it to Major League Baseball. You will not if you don't figure out a better way of meeting the moment, especially in big time moments, and whatever that looks like. Like we say, one thing that sounds good to you might not sound good to me. Everybody has different preferences and what announcers sound like. But if you can't meet the big moments, you're not going to get the big moments, especially at the higher levels. So I thought that last kid, I thought that was good. I thought he met the moment. He was way too wordy. It was about 25 words too long. I wish he would have just stopped talking at some point, but at least the energy was there. I'll give that to him.
Let's take a listen to the Spanish broadcast and see how well they do.
Una cuestión de respeto a los. Creo que yo le fui dando a entender a Cemento.
24 sacudes, recupero la corona. Ahora Alberga la pelota, cumple la marca. Lo aplaude. El cabezazo es de Moshi. Es Wilonja. Es en definitiva un poquito más, un minuto más de final para que intente Vega. Damas y caballeros, ese es el pitazo final. Ese es el pitazo que marca que Soda City, que el equipo de Carolina del Sur es campeón nuevamente de la UPSL. El equipo de Colombia hace historia, consigue ganar de forma consecutiva.
Now, granted, I have no idea what they're saying there, but I don't think there's any doubt. I don't think there's any doubt. There's any doubt, though. Enthusiasm.
No.
Like,
yeah.
But,
But the other thing is like you also realize it has to do with regionally, like you watch these, like even like the NFL highlights back, you watch the Spanish broadcast. They're like,
oh, totally.
they may as well
Culturally,
just be
it's
running
a
around the room.
different animal. I get that, but
Right.
obviously this game took place in the United States. This place, a huge Hispanic culture within the UPSL, and your amateur soccer around this country. So the demand to have Spanish commentary is huge. And so obviously a ton of people watched this game yesterday. But again, I'll keep beating this stick over the head, so to speak, is that to anyone out there that is a commentator, these are moments. These moments are the ones that you will be looked upon, right? You can talk about from the moment the whistle stops until the moment the whistle ends or starts and ends. There's a whole bunch that happens in between there that we will be judged on, but we will not be judged on anything greater than that last call. And again, in that last call, it could be the goal leading up to, whatever. I mean, again, that Vermont call, holy cow, right? The way, even though we thought that maybe there was too much wordiness in there, maybe too much explanation, he was so enthusiastic, energized that anyone will fall in love with that call just because of the energy and authenticity in that call. And so the moment, national championship, it's the final game, a culmination of all these weeks of soccer. Teams traveled from all over the country to be there. You have a world audience tuning in. Show some excitement.
Yeah.
Give the moment what it deserves. And to be fair, the fog didn't earn it.
No. Yeah.
Yep. So
well, and high energy. Yeah.
It's not a knock on the UPSL. I mean, last year I struggled in that game, and I said this because I was not feeling well. I was off. I probably shouldn't have done that game. I felt like, hey, like if I wanted to give it my best, and I fell short of it. But so it's not a knock on the UPS. It's not a knock on this commentator. It's just like, look at the moment for what it is. And I feel like the commentator could have been great for the entire game, and maybe he was. But that moment, I just felt like he didn't deliver in that moment, and that was my opinion.
Yeah, being high energy is something that's, in my opinion, is really important, and also in sports that require it. I mean, like I was talking to some other guys who do more high energy sports, basketball, hockey, soccer, and they're like, they look at what I do in baseball, and they're like, I could never do that because I'm a high energy guy. Like I need stuff to constantly be moving, constantly to be happening, and the truth is like if you deliver a certain amount of energy, people are going to be enamored by it, because if they can tell that no one is more excited to be watching or calling this game in this building than you are, then that's automatically going to generate a lot of favorable feelings from the people who are watching or listening along with you. Like I think about Eric Collins whenever I talk about this. He's the voice of the Charlotte Hornets. I know you don't really care about the NBA. The Hornets are terrible. I mean, they're up there with one of the worst historically ever. I mean, Michael Jordan knew how to play. He didn't know how to run a front office. Let me just put it that way. But no one loves Charlotte Hornets basketball more than Eric Collins does. And I will go out of my way to watch highlights of Charlotte Hornets basketball just to listen to him freak out on the mic. And so that's what an energetic broadcaster can do for you, is that they're going to make you be like, oh, I'm really entertained. I really want to watch this game. Although I know this team sucks, I know that the entertainer is the entertainer. The commentator is very entertaining. And so that's what's going to continually bring me back to it. So that's where the energy, I think people can tell that you really love what you do when that energy is in the right place. And so that's what draws everybody to you. And so that's really, really, really important in my mind, is being high energy. And I don't think that's just reserved to just one or the other. Some guys might be more reserved, and that's fine. That's not a big deal. Again, you can get your point across without having to pull an Eric Collins every time. But energy is a massive, massive, massive part of what we do. And it's because it shows off exactly how much you love exactly what you're doing. And the other thing that I'll say, though, that's important, it's not only about high energy, but it's also realizing that like the product that people are consuming is on the field. You are there to accent that. You are there to elevate that. And that's why we talk about meeting the moment, right? You're not the show, right? Now, people aren't just tuning in to watch, and they are to watch and listen to me, but they're not doing it just to watch me. That's the difference between like this medium and a game. This medium, they're here to come listen to us talk. Like we are the show here. But when we're talking about play-by-play, you're not the show. And so sometimes I think people get that mixed up. And that commentary at the end of that championship game, it would have been good for a podcast. Oh, it's rainy outside. Hey, that team won. They came all this way. That was crazy, right? That's good for podcast. But if you're in the moment as a play-by-play broadcaster, okay, the moment is about what's going on the field, but how do I elevate that moment? And by talking about the fog, or like I heard a baseball championship call once in the Northwoods League where he started talking about this is their 4th straight win and that they had a really good end of the year. It's like, you're not the show, right? The moment is on the field. How do you elevate that moment? And even if you think, even if you're sitting there like, well, this is just the UPSL, it's not even this, it's not even the MLS. Like, why, no, you still have to deliver it with excitement and elevate it to that next level. I mean, I'm going to give the same level of excitement in a 15U championship game as I am in any other game, because I know that the people watching, listening, and consuming it matters a whole lot. Also, to anybody who's going to judge me on what I do or maybe give me a job somewhere down the line, they're also going to watch and hear that and be like, yeah, this guy met the moment. And I'd like to think that maybe that's what you thought, when you were watching me doing my thing once upon a time. So energy is a part of what we do that could make or break your product.
Yeah. And again, understanding the moment for what it is. And obviously, the games, and it's interesting, right? Because every sport is a little bit different, right? When you start talking about, a soccer game, right? Well, that game wasn't an overtime. It was a 4-1 game going into the 90th minute +5, right? And then they score a goal, so it's 4-2. So this game is over, right? So, the game, from that standpoint, the game is over. The likelihood of them coming back is, 0.0001%, right? Yeah. Whatever that number would be. So
yeah,
you can start to say, hey, man, great effort, nail in the coffin, whatever the case, hey, this game, put the cakes on the griddle, as Neil Rule would say, things like that, right? Whatever, right? So you can start to kind of, and then you don't necessarily have to be as energetic when they you don't have to do that. You can, because you set the tone, right? They're going to win, right? They're going to win, right? If it's a blowout in football, they're up by 40 points, boom, right? So I always think of it from that perspective is that, but you look at basketball, right? If the game is tied going into the last couple of moments, or it's a 1 or 2 possession game, and a basket goes in, now it's a 1 possession game, last second opportunity at the buzzer, right? Those things can obviously make the whole building explode, right, with excitement. So there are different things, and soccer is one of those things now. They don't have golden goal, but they used to have golden goal back in the day, right, where you'd be in double overtime, and then it would go into and someone would score a goal in the second overtime period, and everyone would just run on the field like they did in Vermont, right? Vermont, they won in a golden goal environment in the NCAA tournament. There's nothing greater in sports than winning in a sudden death environment to win a national or a world championship, right? Like hockey, think of hockey, right? You double overtime, you're in overtime, it's win or go home, right? You get that goal and you win the whole damn thing, right? That moment is an unbelievable moment. But so again, I think understanding those is really, really important from the commentator standpoint. Jan Volker hops in here, by the way. Good morning, Jan. How are you? A good play-by-play announcer is just more than a commentator. They're essential to the sports experience. I agree with that 100%. We are trying to tell a story. And to be fair, the viewer at home doesn't know the story. They don't know it. They might have an idea, right? They'd have no idea. Like I was talking to my dad, and my dad goes, because I sent my parents like a link, and I'll link, but I'm like, hey, I'm on TV 20 on Saturday, and which is local linear TV here in the Detroit area. And he watched the whole game. He goes, Johnny goes, out of curiosity, where do you get this from? Because it's not from me. I don't have this in me, and maybe your dad probably says the same. Where did you get this idea to broadcast? I go, it just kind of came to me. But the question he asked me, he goes, where do you get all this information to talk about? I go, well, we research. And I said, as part of my research, I'm listening to other commentators, right? I'm watching other broadcasts. So I hear the other commentator. I'm going, oh, I like that. And I'm making note, right? I like that, what they just said. So yes, as commentators, we are constantly stealing stuff from each other, right? It's
Mhm.
constant, right? Why? Because what I like what you say, I like the way you said it, so I'm going to change it up a little bit, and maybe I'll play around with that, right? And so there are
Yeah.
things that we do, but it's like the storylines. Like, how did you know that this team was 23-17 and in all time, whatever? It's important to understand this matchup, right? It's important to understand that Soda City had just won the national championship in the spring in Pittsburgh, and this would be the first time in the history of the UPSL this team was going to win the spring and the fall. It's never happened before, right? It's also important to talk about, okay, well, where the players, the dynamic stats, things like that, right? If you do those types of things, it sets like this foundation for what this game is all about. And then if you do that right throughout the game, when the game comes to an end, you've delivered on it, and you're just putting an exclamation point. And the exclamation point, could be greater. I mean, it could be really enthusiastic or not because you set the tone.
Yeah. And the other thing is, there are human beings under that uniform. And I think sometimes some commentators fall short of understanding that. I think they get caught up in, the information that is publicly available to everybody. Stats, who they played for, where they were before, which again, that's all good stuff. That is all very important stuff when it comes to cultivating exactly what the story is. But the other side of it is, and this is the part of my job that I really enjoy, is when someone comes up to me and they say, you told this story. I've never heard that before. I didn't know this. There was a pitcher who played against the Whitecaps one year. Worked at Panera Bread.
Nice.
For like 2 years. Graduated, worked at Panera Bread. I think he played at like the NAI level or something. So clearly he didn't get many looks to actually go professional. But he worked at Panera Bread for like 2-3 years. And then I think there was a tryout. I think the Lansing Lugnuts had a tryout. Just an open, whoever wants to come, whatever. I think he walks in there and I think he throws like 92 on his first pitch. A guy that was working at Panera Bread. And now I don't know where he is now. I think he's in AA, which is a step above us. But then all of a sudden the next day, he's playing professional baseball, and how he's playing against guys who obviously have big time signing bonuses. And this was a dude that, again, went to Oklahoma something or other and then worked at Panera Bread. And now he's playing in minor league baseball. And to anybody that's listening, it's like, wow, okay. Like, I'm actually kind of cheering for this guy a little bit, like he's not on my team, but like, there's a part of me that's like this whole American underdog story thing that we build our country on. And that's our story as we go from the little guy to all of a sudden now we're a big success. That can really, really draw people in. Learning how to just understand that obviously every human has a story as to what brought them there. And I even tell guys when I'm in the clubhouse before the season starts, I go, listen, like every single one of you guys, anybody that's looking at me right now, listen to me talk, every single one of you have gone through these multiple stages of life and these multiple experiences, good or bad, to get you to where you are today. My job, right, as the team's journalist, right, or the network's journalist, I'm not out in the field investigating murders or conspiracies or anything like that, but I am investigating the people that are on my team and what got them to this point. So personal anecdotes, stories, trainers, whoever they met, maybe who they've worked with. Those are all things that really play into what we do. And so you're right, JT, it's bringing the experience alive and it's telling stories, right? It's no different in my mind than sitting around a campfire and telling a campfire story. There just so happens to be a game going on in front of you. And one of my favorite guilty pleasures in life is listening to campfire stories. And so that's part of the reason why I like storytelling. I remember my grandpa is the best storyteller I've ever met in my life. And I think that's part of where I got it from. I think him, as well as my dad, is just extremely loud. So I think that helps in my field a lot. So I think when you combine those two things, it certainly helps out. But we are telling a story. And so, I think you and I obviously have both worked at that in a lot in our careers, but that's what makes the difference.
No, it does. And I think it's important as we wrap this show up here today, episode number 20, is this is not an attack on the broadcaster.
No.
I think that's important to say that. The reality is everybody, if we're not all students of this, then to be fair, then it should be an attack, I guess. But we should all be students of this. And what I think it's fun. I think it's too we should address as well as that, and probably future shows is our success or the level at which we get to. Will that hinder our love for the game or our love of doing this, right? Because at some point in time, there's an athlete who's a brand new rookie, gets into that opportunity, right? They love the game, then it becomes a business, right? And then they start to not love it as much as they used to, and it starts to show in how they handle themselves in their environment, in their sports environment. Are we guilty of that as broadcasters as well? Absolutely we are. Now, is that everybody? No, but I do believe that on some level, there are broadcasters, talent, on-air talent that are out there right now who are at the highest level of the sport that they currently call, and they don't love it. Not anymore. They love doing it because it pays them really good money, but maybe they don't love it like they used to. And I'm curious to have that conversation with you, and include our audience as well. And is that a real thing? Do commentators, do on-air talent, do they forget about what they got them there, which was the love of calling the game? And is that still portrayed in how they handle themselves on the air? We'll talk about that much more on future Inside the Games. But that is a wrap here on number 20. We appreciate all you stopping by and being a part of this. If you haven't liked and shared and subscribed with your friends and family, you're on our list. You got to share it with your friends and family, right? There you go. But Nathan, any final thoughts, man, before we skedoodle?
No, it's really another really good conversation. And by the way, I do think burnout is a real thing, but I also think that's why you have to attack this job with a level of childish energy. Because if you don't, more importantly, if you don't remember the reason why you got in initially, it's going to be really hard to stick around. And that's why I have issues sometimes with people who are like, oh, I like sports, that's why I want to do it. I'm like, it has to be bigger than that, because you're going to run into the business side of it that really drags you down emotionally, fiscally, everything else like that. Like this sports industry is going to beat you the hell up. So you better be willing to attack it with that childish energy, because if you don't, it's going to be hard to stick around.
That it will be. That's a wrap here on number 20, Inside the Game, the podcast here on the National Soccer Network. John Turner alongside Nathan Wengler. Have a great rest of your Monday, and we'll see you more tomorrow right here, 9 a.m. on Inside the Game.
Peace.